I'm Gabriele Sanguigno, CEO and founder of ToothFairyAI. So I know that this picture might be misleading. This is not a get rich quick kind of talk. Not about NFTs or cryptos. It's going to be about AI. So we hope that we're going to demystify some of the common mistakes, and also hopefully after this talk you're going to have some. If the flicker works, no, the flicker doesn't work. That's good. You're going to have some proper superpowers to stop most of the bullets that you get when you try to start your own AI business, in general AI. And I know that there are a bunch of technical people here, but you don't have to know C++ to get the job done. So essentially, what we want to do in this talk is to help you get started, and hopefully you're going to make not our mistakes. Maybe you're going to make your own, but that's good. And obviously, we will try to help you out, giving you kind of what we have learned, and also, why not, giving you some of the use cases that we as ToothFairy are not going to cover. So maybe you can cover, and then you can, help us out. So essentially, what we're going to cover today, a bit of an icebreaker. Sorry, I'm going to move this one because the clicker anyway is not working. So it's going to be a bit of an icebreaker about me. Don't worry, just one slide. I know that you want to see just the issues, not exactly about myself. We're going to give you a bit of an introduction about what currently globally I see as an AI trend, and obviously we can talk about it, and also what's happening in Australia. The 7 remarkable mistakes that we have made, or startups make, and then we start talking about, okay, how can you take the examples that we've given and then start your own AI journey, okay? Then we will give you a bit of an introduction in terms of what we did, and obviously we would love to get your feedback. Show you a bit of the chatbot arena, Q&A, networking. That's where the best comes out of these meetups anyway. Any questions so far? So far, so good, I guess. Okay, so a bit of an icebreaker. So 4 simple questions. So first of all, raise your hand if you have ever used one AI assistant in your life ever. Okay, so everybody knows about that. So second question is, do you use it daily to run your own business or to code or to study? I do. All right, so fair few. All right, so in the spectrum of being a beginner and an expert, would you define yourself a beginner? All right, so few, lots of experts. All right, so I guess who is the expert here? All right, so many people are experts. Cool. All right, fair enough. So hit me with technical questions and transformers architecture and so on and so forth. Let's talk about that. So a bit about myself. So as you can tell by my accent, I'm definitely not Australian. I'm Italian, migrated to Australia 8 years ago because I met my wife in Florence. So long story short, resigned from my job, moved to Australia with no job. I guess that it resonates with a lot of people here anyway. So obviously, as an Italian, I'm in love with food. Don't get me started on pineapple pizza, okay? So if you want a proper chat with me, let's not start there. Obviously, we have done events here. So I'm very passionate about trying to help people out rather than just, always trying to make the salesy pitch, which I'm not good at anyway. So I come from Naples, where pizza was invented. I also love Australia. So I'm kind of like a blend, call it that way. All right. So essentially, the first thing that I want to show, or at least share with you, is that obviously there is kind of like a dichotomy between what's happening globally and what's happening in Australia in the AI space, which is pretty strange. So obviously, globally, in terms of trends, apart from the hype, which we're going to talk about anyway, so technically speaking, there is a lot of push towards quantization, miniaturization of LLMs. There is also the concept now of SLM, which is like small language model, but essentially call it miniaturized models. Obviously, these SLMs can be used locally, including your mobile phone, and there is a big push towards that, which I think is great for privacy and customization, of course, and also multimodality. I think you've seen the announcements at the Google I/O, plus GPT-4o. Everyone is pushing towards that, which is great. Obviously, we want more and more ways of dealing with AI. Okay. Now, this is globally, but what's happening in Australia? All right, so in Australia, first and foremost, very slow adoption. The reason why I can confidently tell you that there is slow adoption, no one is buying GPUs. If you don't have GPUs, I don't think you can run much. Okay, maybe you can run the spacey NLP prior to transformers kind of architecture, but you kind of live in the prehistory anyway. So this is obviously a problem. And we talk to Dell, we talk to proper GPU providers that have partnerships with NVIDIA, and we know that there is not a lot. As a matter of fact, I can tell you, you're talking of, in Australia, in the last 6 months, less than 100 H100s have been sold, period. And think about this for a moment. Like Meta is now more than 10,000 just themselves. Australia globally, 100. So this is a problem. Second thing, data governance is a concern, which is actually a good thing. So every single business we talk to, the first question that we get is, where is your data stored? Where are your LLMs? And obviously this is good. It means that they actually care about the data privacy, which is something that we're really passionate about. But this is something you need to be aware of. So if you start sending data overseas, yeah, not a great business idea. Lastly, which is kind of probably a combination of the slow adoption, but it's actually difficult to get GPUs. We have been answered by one cloud provider that I'm not going to nominate here. We cannot give you the A100s, but we can give you the A10s. Okay, so what can you run on an A10, as a matter of fact, compared to an A100, if you think about it? So that kind of tells you also how the bar is set here in Australia, where you can get basically inferior GPUs, where you can do stuff, but not a lot of stuff. So let's talk about the mistakes. Some of them are pretty salty, so we're going to have probably a laugh about them. So first of all, this is a mistake that thankfully we haven't made, but because many people do it, we kind of want to share it first and foremost. Personal suggestion, don't try to be the hot startup that then after you lift the veil, you're just a ChatGPT wrapper. Don't do that for yourself, really. I think that probably you've seen Character AI, Inflection AI, Stability AI. Shall I continue with the list of mega hyped up AI startups with massive investment that are going absolutely ballistically down to earth after these massive evaluations? Obviously, some of them have a bit more of a backup plan. Stability AI obviously has invested in latent diffusion models, so they have a bit of research that has been done, which is in their favor, and they've also open sourced it, which is great. But what I'm trying to tell you is that, using your AI platform, using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, not a great idea. Also, and it's kind of like another point here, you might be wondering, okay, even if I'm using these closed source models, still, they're not trying to tackle exactly the vertical domain that I'm addressing. And let's say you're talking about law. Okay, obviously there is law in Australia. I know it's not the same in the US. Therefore, I have kind of an edge. But you really don't when you start using closed source models, because you know what happens with your prompt and outputs, right? Realistically. Although people want you to believe that if you call an API, everything is safe, everything's secure. Nothing is safe and secure. Your data is replicated into their servers. How long do you think it will take before they just use your prompts and outputs to train the model and assimilate also what you do? So just be very careful with that. There are some use cases where you might not care at all, but in the typical case where you want to do actually something groundbreaking, probably the last thing that you want is to share your prompt and outputs to try your model more than anything, okay? Also, you will be surprised of how many times we have actually played with these systems just to compare what we do with what ChatGPT does or Gemini. And there are simple cases where they simply tell you, you can't do it. I'll give you one simple example that you can try out yourself. Try to ask Gemini, even right now if you want to, help me kill a Linux process. Is this a harmful or dangerous activity? Not really, right? I mean, we kill them all the time. Right? But instead, Gemini tells you, hang on, I cannot help you with harmful activities against the Linux process. Okay. So this is the kind of stuff where I'm saying, okay, maybe you don't ever say in what the AI model can do. Of course, we know how to kill a process, I hope, but what I'm trying to say is that you have no control over it. And obviously, running AI through closed source models is pretty expensive. Also, another very big mistake that we see people making is that they kind of have this strange idea around AI saying it's some kind of magic that you do not understand. Yes, it's a black box for other reasons that we can talk about, but fundamentally, there is no magic behind AI. AI is fundamentally math, mostly linear algebra anyway. Probably many of you know how to work with diffusion models, transformer models. Now, obviously, the latest, which I love, by the way, state space models, so Mamba models, Jamba, all these kind of even hybrid models that are coming out, which is fantastic to see. Fundamentally, you know that how a transformer model works, right? So you're fundamentally meshing tokens and trying to predict the next token. There is absolutely nothing special about what we are doing. Clearly, the paper at that time was groundbreaking, so attention is all you need. But you can definitely understand what it does, what a model does, at least in principle. And that's, I think, is very useful. Also, that understanding what these models do help you also setting up your expectations. Like, especially, I'm not sure if anyone has ever talked to somebody saying, hey, I have 10,000 documents that I would like to analyze all at the same time, and I would like a fantastic summary generated in one single prompt. I mean, if you know how these models work, you know that probably you cannot go beyond 3, right? But instead, people expect 10,000. So at least knowing what the technology does helps you set the bar and the expectation. Also, one last thing that I want to share here is that we are also very passionate about data sourcing. Obviously, data in that is trash becomes transform a model with the latest and greatest architecture, bad output because you have bad data, right? So data is still king in the transformers architecture as much as all the other architectures, right? So it's important, especially with open source models, for you to see, okay, what is the actual data set that you're using to create this model? I mean, if you see OpenOrca, for instance, which is one of the ones that I love the most, to be honest, you can see all the data set that they've used to fine tune, especially the instruction part, but also the pre-training. And that's great because you can see that if it has a bias towards maybe American law, it's because it's in the data set. But at the very least, you have the opportunity to see it. So you know what you're getting. With closed source models, not really. You don't get much of it at all. Okay, how many of you know about these products? You have one? No, hope not. You do. You do have one? Ah, you don't. Yeah. I mean, you saw the video. Yeah. Okay. And once you saw the review, what did you think? I'll buy straight away. Right. Exactly. And by the way, it is. Somebody actually jailbreak a Rabbit R1, and it's actually an Android app behind the scenes. Although the owner said no, it's a completely new OS. I said, why don't you use Linux if you want to do that? Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to look around too much. Anyway, so essentially, I think you know about these devices, right? I mean, MKBHD did fantastic reviews about it. I mean, I love them because it literally destroyed that company in a moment. And just a quick thing that I've learned about it today that I want to share. The founder of Rabbit R1 was a crypto founder of, I think it's Gamma. Yes. Gamma. So, and he used the investment for the cryptocurrency and NFT to then, right. So that's very interesting, right? Yeah, the crypto king that becomes AI king. That's funny. So anyway, the reason why we're trying to share this is like, don't do this for the hype. Don't do this for the hype at all. AI still requires a lot of work. As a matter of fact, as a founder, I'm telling you, the technology has hundreds of limitations, hundreds. So, and there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and there is no point in overhyping the technology, because when it gets in the hands of the customer, then you get an experience like that. So, okay, is it really AI? Is it really smart? Not really. There is still a lot of work. And also, many hyped up AI companies have already failed, have already bankrupt. I think that you know a couple of examples yourself. You can chase the millions of dollars of investments, but you will soon be surprised that it's not very hard to recover from these investments, because you're not the only one with a cool idea about AI. And the market is so noisy that extracting revenue from the massive investment that you might be making is super, super hard. And if you do it just for the hype, you will give up straight away. It will be just your pet project that becomes open source that nobody cares about. So just be very, very mindful of that. Doing your own side projects, fantastic. That's how I've learned myself. But doing it for the hype, not really. That's not gonna work out. Also, just one last thing. The Transformers architecture, that is basically what's powering everything that you're seeing right now with large language models, was published in 2017. Now we are in 2024. There is absolutely nothing groundbreaking about what we are doing right now. The Transformers models existed 8 years ago. It's just that now they are becoming more and more intuitive because we just have more compute to throw at them. But there is nothing groundbreaking about ChatGPT 3.5 as opposed to ChatGPT 2. The technology and the architecture is exactly the same. It's the scale that is changing. So that's just to give you the idea. Not that I'm salty about OpenAI, but but then I'm wondering, okay, yeah, this guy now is saying that the hype is not that real, and I'm not gonna make a lot of money through AI, and you have to be careful with investments. You're not going to make a lot of money. But the AI influencers say that every day, literally, I mean, if I look at YouTube, it seems like every day there is a breakthrough. Every day there is a new transformer architecture. There is a new model that has come out. The reality is that they should come up with a new paper, not the technical people, but the marketing people, maybe. Attention is all they need. Because that's literally what it is. Like, this is all a big kind of like, let's say, incentive that social media networks are giving them to attract as much attention as they possibly can by making very bold claims. Like, one of which that I really loved, by the way, is from David Shapiro, that probably some of you look at on YouTube. I try not to follow him too much, but AGI within 7 months. There is nothing AGI in the next 7 months. Probably we're not going to have AGI for the next decade, considering the architecture that we have today. If you truly understand what the architecture is doing, you thinking that you're going to get AGI just with scale, you will see very soon how many papers are already coming out saying that we are now in the phase of diminishing returns. So this exponential curve is simply not there. What we see is that the more compute and scale we give with the very same architecture of 2017 will not allow us to go in the exponential part of the function. We are more like on the plateau side of the function. We're more looking at a logarithmic function. We're not looking at an exponential function at all. Okay. And also, another funny thing that I see all the time, don't learn how to code, because AI will do coding for you. I mean, okay, I guess that you understand what I'm saying. And also, shocking results on the human eval. I'm sure that you know that there are benchmarks on Hugging Face, which is fantastic. Yeah, you get some benchmarks publicly available. There is data contamination with the benchmarks, so we know that the benchmarks are not necessarily the best, but at least they give you an idea of what the model does. Okay, so you cannot be, again, too upset with Hugging Face because they open source the benchmarks. But many people don't even know what human eval is. They think that there is a human evaluator behind the model that checks every single answer and then says, as a human, I'm evaluating the model. It's literally one line of code that you compare the output of the model with. And the lines of code are, can you create a Fibonacci sequence? That's the kind of code that we are comparing it with. So even when they say, I get shocking results on human eval, it's not shocking results on a business logic that you have implemented. It's on 2 lines of code that you're getting the shocking results, just to frame what the shocking result is. Then another thing that typically is a mistake, as far as I can see, is that you think, okay, even though I cannot solve my problem very efficiently, I'm pretty sure that I can drop on this, let's say, Claude 3 Opus, or I can go GPT-4o, and I can throw, maybe I combine them so that they can review what they're saying, and then I'm going to get the best result because I've thrown all the computation I possibly can. That is simply not where you can create something valuable. But first of all, because you understand also that you would be probably paying hundreds of dollars to both Anthropic and OpenAI at the same time, not great. But secondly, if you understand how these models operate, really the generalization that you think they offer is in most cases very overrated. So when you ask a model to do something, let's say you're studying data science. Okay, you probably ask, okay, tell me how to run, I don't know, how to use PyTorch to create a vector and then calculate the dot product so that I can get a value that I can use for cosine similarity or whatever. Okay, and then you ask the model to generate that piece of code. You as a person, would you ask the same model, hey, can you please tell me how to perform a surgery in my heart right now because I'm having a problem or something like completely unrelated to coding? Not really. You typically use the models to do exactly the tasks that you want them to accomplish because they need to help you. They don't need to help humanity all at the same time. So when you look at production models that you can use for your own platform, you don't really want generalization. You actually want specification. You actually want them to do something specific for your domain that you can fine tune for the task at hand, because you're not going to ask these models to become engineers, medics, doctors, lawyers, all at the same time. So in that sense, unless you're building the new AGI model in 7 months, you don't really need generalization. But also another important thing is that LLMs are not all you need. So now everybody's talking about LLMs, but for people like myself that have been working in AI for 10 years, LLMs are not the only model existing. There are plenty of models that you can use. I mean, you can go with linear regression models, or you can stable diffusion models, of course, is another one. But what I'm saying is that you can also use NER extractions. You can use intent detection. You can go with categorization that doesn't require necessarily LLMs to perform these kind of tasks that can be helpful for creating your platform without spending a fortune in LLMs and massive context that you need to pass to actually tell them what to do. Sixth, you don't have any moat here, and this is very salty towards Google and OpenAI as well. So this is probably something, I'm not sure if you've ever seen it, but obviously these companies try to hide this kind of stuff because they want you to believe otherwise. But this is actually coming from one Google employee right before they delivered Bard, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, or Gemini. I'm getting lost with all the names that they're coming up with these models. So anyway, what this internal memo was saying is that obviously Google is trying to catch up with OpenAI. However, they both realize that they have no moat or no advantage. And neither OpenAI does. And there is a third kind of, I'd say, faction, to use their words, that has quietly been eating their cake. Now, internally, we know that they were referencing the open source community. And that's true, because ultimately, all these new breakthroughs, the real stuff that is coming through, the real papers that can push this industry forward are all open source. There is nothing from the closed source models that you're going to get where you're going to say, wow, okay, this is something that nobody has thought of. And they have come up with a new research paper, not published, behind closed doors, that magically gives them an advantage. There is nothing further from the truth. As a matter of fact, they've all been using the very same papers. And I'm going to mention them. Attention is all you need, open source. LoRa, open source. QLoRa, open source. Stable diffusion, open source. Latent diffusion, open source. So here, there is nothing secret that they are doing. They are computing more than you, but there is none of real advantage, if that makes sense, aside from being able to buy, obviously, 1 million GPUs. That's an advantage, actually. Also, just be careful with the idea that you have you have curated your prompts and you think that the prompts are your secret sauce. I mean, I find it very kind of like interesting that people think that they have an advantage because they have a prompt, and then I can go on Anthropic and I can see all the templates of all the single prompts that they can come up with. So just be very mindful. Prompt is not your secret sauce. It cannot be, okay? Also, if you think, yeah, but I'm willing to spend more money in API calls than anyone else, there is always going to be another person that is going to spend more than you. And is going to call GPT-4 rather than 10 times, 1 million times. There is always going to be that person, okay? Also, if you're wondering, okay, I want to go quick and my advantage is speed of doing something that kind of makes sense but kind of doesn't, you're not the only one that knows about LangChain, Llama Index, and I could keep going with frameworks. Like, let's not make the same mistake that we've done, unfortunately, with JavaScript of over-frameworkization of everything we do. Understanding the basics of what these frameworks do is not that hard. And that's where innovation can come through, rather than just building stuff on top of frameworks. So try to push yourself in that. It's a mistake to start just using LangChain because it's easy. Try a bit harder. And also, just bear in mind, you're not going to build the next state-of-the-art model anytime soon because you don't have 1 million GPUs sitting on your garage. If you do, please talk to me, and then we can figure something out together. Also, the last one is like about obviously fine-tuning, not prompt engineering. So yes, understanding how to prompt the model is valuable, right? So, but I guess there is the basic knowledge that you need to have if you want to do something valuable with AI. So obviously, many of you probably have heard about RAGs, or retrieval augmented generation. And obviously now the latest that has come out, which is actually quite interesting, is in context learning, which, I mean, I'm happy to talk to you in case you're interested, which is kind of a good hybrid between fine-tuning and RAG with some good results as well. But RAG obviously has limitations, right? Let alone the fact that you cannot pass to RAG 5 million documents, right, at the same time. Forget about the runtime speed, but also the throughput and the cost. So RAG has its own limitations. LoRa and QLoRa are actually been very streamlined. I mean, compared to the beginning, where also for me it was bloody hard to come up with something reasonable with dropouts, parameters, the number of adapters, the ranking, and these all parameters where I was, to be honest, I was just trial and error kind of thing, saying, okay, see what sticks. Now it's instead very, very easy to start some QLoRa experiments in a way that is not necessarily too difficult to come up with something reasonable, yeah? And also, and this is probably my strongest take here, your curated data is actually the king in this case. If you can come up, forget about synthetic or humanly generated, doesn't really matter. But if you can come up with the curated data set that can actually give you a good balance between data that has been already seen by the model and data that instead you are giving to the model that probably has never seen inside the training set, which is the good combination to get good fine-tuning results, that's actually extremely valuable, not just valuable, because that's where you can make the real difference with the models. Okay. Oh, sorry, just clicking the wrong button. So, okay, where to start with the AI journey now? Since we are kind of understood that we made lots of mistakes, of course. So I hope that you found enjoyment in the mistakes that we made. First of all, in terms of where to start, investigate your option up front. So don't try to make the changes as you go, because to me, this is probably the fundamental approach that you need to take, because it is very easy to start with closed source models, but similar to a sigmoid function, you get the first 80% of the results straight away. So you feel super cool. You feel the adrenaline rush saying, wow, I'm getting everything done super fast. And then the remaining 20%, it's going to be tough to get it through. With open source models, instead you go through initial depression that probably continues for 2-3 months until the model is fine-tuned correctly, and then you start getting actually very interesting results, outperforming on your dataset closed source models relatively easily. So, and you will be amazed by what a Mistral 7B instruct model can do with a good dataset. So, mark my words, you should try it out and see for yourself. Especially, I think that if you go with the 4-bit quantization, you can literally run it on almost an RTX 3090. So even if you have a gaming computer, you would probably use it. The second point is, like, once you understand that you want to go through pain at the beginning or massive excitement and then pain at the end, closed source and open source, address downstream tasks. Don't go general. Don't go with the massive generalization, just because the big players are playing that game already. So if you try to chase AGI yourself with your RTX in the garage, I'm not sure I want to follow you in that path. But if instead you have some specific task that you can solve for, and I can tell you, even mundane stuff like I want to automatically summarize an email and understand if I'm getting a harassment, yes or no, from this email, and the business is interested in that, you can come up with a project relatively quickly just using open source models. Why? Because you know what the model needs to do, rather than I want it to be a lawyer, an architect, and a doctor. Now, this is kind of like the segue of assuming that you have chosen, I think, the right path of open source. You have addressed what the downstream task is going to be. So let's assume for a moment, again, because here there are lots of data scientists, AI engineers, whatever, forgive me, let's go on coding. Let's assume for a moment that here I have a model that by default, forget about prompt engineering for a moment, by default generates, assuming that I'm giving a prompt like, okay, can you give me a method that calculates the total cost of an order by going through a loop, as you can see. The total cost at the beginning is 0. Then you loop through the list or array, depending if you're coming from JavaScript. Yeah? And then the total cost obviously becomes the sum iteratively of the price multiplied by the quantity with returning total cost. I know that Python coders will say, why are you explaining this? But there are also people that don't know Python. So that's why I'm going through this process. So obviously, if we look at this, especially from a programmer, you would say, okay, this is pretty verbose. I'm sure there are lots of people that are thinking, I don't like it, right? I can do this with one line. Yes. So it's very imperative. It's possibly easier to debug. Yep. And for some reason also it's less memory efficient, and we can talk about that maybe in a separate section. But essentially this is an okay function. But then let's say that I want to fine tune it because I don't like imperative. I like declarative, right? There you go. Then I can ask the model pretty easily to fine tune its responses on a specific style. Why this is the easiest way for models to learn? Because when you fine tune, the easiest thing that you can teach them, teach the LLMs, of course, is new patterns. So let's say that you want a specific style, you want a specific way of responding, but you're not trying to inject new knowledge, if that makes sense. Injecting new knowledge is typically what models learn during pre-training. And with LoRa is really hard to, so with the low ranking adaptation, it's really hard to modify the weights up to a point where you can really inject new knowledge into the models. You can, but it's very expensive. Why? Because you need to go with the very high rank, which means that you need to replicate the weights in detail to be able to modify every single adapter throughout the transformer model. And obviously, it's harder to debug, but coder loves that, right? So when you see the code, you don't understand what it does. It means it's good code because you only understand it, and they need to keep you on board. Otherwise, it can't be fixed. So that's good. So my experience as an AI founder, of course, I also said that to my team, I'll write a book, especially if the company fails. I'll write a book about AI, yeah, and all the things that I've learned. My biography kind of to say. Okay, so anyway, whenever you start your own AI journey, just bear in mind that despite the fact that AI, yes, probably represents the key business value of your platform, I would assume, if you start your own AI company, 95% of your startup has nothing to do with AI. Users still need buttons, they need text input, they actually don't want anything that is more difficult than Instagram feed to work with your platform. So you will have to spend thousands and thousands of hours just to modify and update the UX so that people understand what you're trying to accomplish inside your platform. You will be surprised of how many users we just lost in the first 10 seconds. I think at the beginning, the engagement rate on our website, I can tell you proper stats, was like 8 seconds. What does that mean to you? Nobody understood what we were doing. That's as simple as that. Okay, so, and you could say, did we modify the model to make them understand what we do? No. Did we spend probably more time than fine-tuning? Yes, we spent more time on that than fine-tuning the model. Believe it or not, that's what it is. So just be very mindful of that. We are all excited about AI, but users aren't. Users just want to save time or solve problems. But you still need to know AI. So yeah, you are in the crossfire kind of thing. The user on one side, but you need to learn about AI as well. So now this is again where it becomes probably again programmers. Let's see your reaction to this. So I'm sure that every one of you that especially works on code like myself has enjoyed at the beginning GitHub Copilot or Continue, or if you are like, if you care about privacy, maybe you've used Llama CPP, probably LM Studio, which is obviously the integration that we have with MacBooks, ARM chipsets. But essentially, GPT agents are, I think, used by the vast majority of the coders, I would say, programmers. Yeah, I think it's reasonable to say that because they are useful. How many times you are asked to create a function that does something that you know other people on Stack Overflow with their salty posts have already resolved, and you don't want to go on Stack Overflow and getting bashed by, you know, the mega expert that tells you, hey, this is not a question that you should be asking. This is a duplicate, right? I hate that. I don't know how many times I got that comment anyway. It's a duplicate. Just give me the answer. So ChatGPT solves that problem easily, or any other AI model that is capable enough for app programming lets you get the answer the way you want it. This is extremely useful. You save a lot of time on that. However, it is also true that this works only if you have a very good understanding of what's happening. So you cannot say, I've never heard of what an array is, write a function that inverts the array and calculates some kind of number at the end, right? So you want to understand what's happening behind the scenes. Generate the boilerplate code, sure, but at the same time, you need to be able to read it and understand what it does. Because ultimately, you're always the person that ends up debugging it because bugs happen, right? So you want to do that. In fact, I really like Linus Torvalds, of course, because first of all, he's the creator of Linux, but also the fact that he's very opinionated about what he says. And yeah, I completely agree with that. Bad programmers worry about the code, true, yeah, but probably you should care about the structures and their relationships, because that's where the big issues happen. When you've architected something incorrectly, not when you've written 2 lines of code that are not super efficient, declarative, and optimized. Believe it or not. Sorry to say, but that's what it is. So when is that you should not really use coding assistants, and probably you should do yourself a favor and learn first the programming language. When you have that, when you have massive holes, massive gaps, like saying, okay, I don't know anything about programming, and unfortunately I've seen many people doing that. I don't know anything about programming, but it doesn't matter. I can just ask ChatGPT to generate the code for me, copy and paste, run, without probably even knowing how to run a Python script, by the way, and everything will work out. So obviously this is not true. This is not how technically you can get some solutions that actually work. And this is the typical example of what I call zero users application bubble. That probably the code that you're running through that is probably code that you're also going to be the only one executing. Because if you want to do anything meaningful with coding and provide good software, ChatGPT is not going to give you the solutions that you're looking for. It's going to speed you up, but you must have the background knowledge. Also, another very salty quote from Linus, of course, is if you copy that function, it automatically becomes garbage because you don't understand what it does. And how many times you've seen code from other people in your repository, you look at it, say, no, I don't understand what it does. And automatically the code becomes unmaintainable. I need to change the entire function because I don't understand this piece of code that has been written by a guy that left me 2 years ago, maybe, on the project. The list goes on. Also, another thing that we really recommend when you start with startups in general, but especially AI, use cloud wisely. Again, this is kind of connecting to the influencers as well. Like where you say, oh yeah, don't worry. Like you don't want to learn about GraphQL, you don't want to learn about Apollo, you don't want to run Postgres maybe on your own virtual machines. Fine. Use this serverless solution provided by AWS, provided by Azure, and everything will be solved for you. And again, you end up in the sigmoid function. Yeah, 20%, the note-taking app, you can build it in 5 minutes. The actual app that works, you build it in 5 years, trying to fix the problems of these solutions. So be very careful, first of all, on the stack that you're using. Try to really go bare bone. Like I'm not saying become a Kubernetes expert, okay? But at the very least, understand the basics that running your own database server is not that hard. Running your Apache server is not that hard. And fundamentally, if you want to do something on the cloud, bear in mind that serverless means at the beginning you pay very little, but then when you scale, that's when the real price goes up, okay? And you're locked in as well, which is very nice at the end. Also, if you're looking at GPUs, at the beginning, please don't think, okay, I need to buy 4 A100s on a rack because I need to do this fantastic thing. Try to go serverless at the beginning with GPUs. GPUs are bloody expensive. And whatever project you're running at the beginning, it doesn't really matter where you're running it, but try to stay as serverless as you can. If you want to run your experimentations, do it. Start the machine, turn off the machine straight away, because otherwise the bill at the end of the night will shock you already. Mark my words, try to run an NVIDIA A100 on AWS and then tell me about it, because we have tried and it's pretty expensive. So obviously once you scale, if you have used your own hardware, obviously it's better because you can scale a bit easier, especially if you use MIG, you can kind of break it down and virtualize some of the GPU, VRAM at least that you have available. But just be very, very mindful. GPUs are expensive. So when you procure those, check the bill. So now this comes into probably where I would really like to give you some suggestions in terms of where I see a massive market gap. And don't worry, we're not going to become your competitor, so feel free to go ahead and do it. So obviously there are some adoption challenges. I'm talking by experience. So obviously if you think that these are not challenges, feel free to reach out. I'm sure we can come up with more. So one of those is a vendor lock-in and AI fragmentation, which I basically try to summarize in no AI strategy. So the 99.9% of the business owners that obviously are not programmers, obviously are not AI engineers, obviously they don't look at the Transformers papers, They don't care about what AI model you're running. They don't care that there is fragmentation of their AI solutions. They are just looking at solving problems. If you can come in though, and you can give them proper strategies to start their AI journey and avoiding lock-ins, making sure that they have something scalable, something that can be applied to many departments across their businesses, that's a big one. The second one is about the controllability of these models. Obviously, we all know about hallucination. We all get pissed when an AI system starts going absolutely ballistic on some of the answers that you're looking for. And obviously, this is a matter of research at this stage. Lots of researchers are trying to solve this problem. However, if you can come up with some proper solutions to the controllability issues, which could be truth grounding, which could be, obviously verification of the prompt, trying to distill what the prompt of the user is and trying to buff it up so that for the LLM, it's easier to understand what the user is looking for. Obviously, I'm sure that you have heard about these techniques. That's actually very, very useful, simply because businesses can then rely better on the responses coming from the AI that they are using. And obviously, having controllability also means monitoring and observability of the inputs and outputs, which is, again, another very interesting area. Third, if you're a true AI expert, and by true AI expert, I mean that you can go beyond closed source models, LangChain, Llama Index kind of thing, so you can do the step at least below, then you would be considered, at least in my mind, and probably many people's mind, an expert, right? So again, I'm not saying go on the whiteboard and design the transformer architecture from scratch. Tell me about key values and queries, and tell me exactly all the linear algebra that goes through every single linear, every single multi-dimensional layer and the linear layers. Nobody will ask you that. However, if you have good control over what the AI models do, and you can run some proper low-level code, even using PyTorch, using TensorFlow, and you have that level of expertise, I can tell you right now, this is extremely, extremely rare. So you have value right there. And you can easily find a job just on that, okay? Fourth, privacy and security, big time. Every business we talk to, the first question that we get asked, where is your data stored? Straight away. So if you can solve, or at least address, some of these concerns via segregating how the data is stored, or via allowing at least for more transparency and reduction of the bias in the responses that the models give you, like such as an easy example is, what's the weather today? Guess what is the city that it mentions when you ask about the weather? San Francisco. Guess why, right? So if you can solve these kind of problems, yeah, again, there is a massive market for it. So I'm just going to give you a very quick introduction about ToothFairy, because you might be wondering now, okay, you've been talking about these mistakes, you've been talking about all these issues, you're talking about, you need to become some kind of AI expert, otherwise you can have a problem with whatever you're building, right? I just want to prompt engineer. So you might be wondering what we are doing. And obviously I would like, to be honest, just to have a conversation more than anything. So essentially, what we try to build is obviously an enterprise AI solution. So we're not looking after B2C too much, so don't worry about it. So we really believe in, obviously, privacy. We believe in customization. And to be honest, also in the fact that it must be real time. So that means that we go a bit beyond RAG, which is just about documents, when 99% of the data of businesses is actually sitting on databases, data warehouses. So it doesn't make sense that we look too much at this documentation when the real data is actually sitting somewhere else. That's what we stand for. We worked on AI agents from probably 2022. We started with content creators and business analysts, and then obviously now everybody's speaking about AI agents. But we started a lot of work on that. And obviously we believe in the fact that every business should be in a position to customize their own AI and host their own AI in whichever infrastructure they want, and they should not be locked in even with us. As a matter of fact, you fine-tune the model in ToothFairy, you don't like the platform, take the weights, take the model, host it wherever you like. So for us, there is absolutely no point in having any lock-in, and our mission is to democratize AI. So we don't have to become the next billion-dollar company. We just want to become a company where businesses can say, okay, even if I'm not an AI expert and I want to run this thing in my own business, yeah, use the platform and get it started. And then once you're at that point, do it yourself. Download the weights, move on. For us, it's just a matter of starting you out. But if you are an AI expert, do it yourself. Yeah, be our guest. That's exactly what we stand for. And obviously, I don't have to tell you that we don't use anything like ChatGPT, Gemini, and Anthropic, right? Like, it's pretty obvious that we use only open source models. So obviously, you can use ToothFairy for a variety of things, but some of the most common scenarios, obviously, customer service. So you ask a question on a chatbot, and then you get an answer that is not necessarily nonsensical, and especially that keeps context of what I said. Like, it's the first test that I always do with chatbots. Who are you? And then they give you, how are you today? But I'm asking you, who are you? Right? So, there are these kind of things that to me are completely nonsense. Or I ask a chatbot, what did I say before? And it says, how are you today again? So these are the kind of things that we try to implement better. Also, obviously, first level support. So addressing tickets, you know that 80% of the tickets that you get are always the same. So it kind of makes sense that you automate that process through an AI agent that is trained on those tickets. Again, that's what we try to do. And also like learning and training is actually very useful. To be honest, this is what I use AI for basically daily, brainstorming stupid ideas. And then the AI sometimes helps me understand that probably what I'm saying is not right, or trying to make sense of what I'm saying that again doesn't make sense. So for this kind of brainstorming and help in learning things, I feel it is extremely useful. So for us, it makes sense that we open up to businesses that again don't have the technical expertise to build it, but they still have a massive need for this, especially if you think about all the employee retention issues that we have. Employees keep on changing every single time. You don't want to train every single time. Maybe you just want an AI agent that gives you the answers. So you don't have a trainer that explains that to you. Anyway, you can use ToothFairy literally for any department, but this is simply some use cases that we thought it was worthwhile sharing. Here we have just a very quick video of what it does. Essentially, what we did was, this is actually for a AI national startup event. So we've just created a workspace. Obviously, you understand workspace like projects so that you can segregate things in different sections. And this was for Stone and Chalk. The only thing that we did is that we took the website data, scraped it all, imported it into ToothFairy so that we have a good understanding of what Stone and Chalk does, right? So this is just a chat agent. You can see the name here, Stone and Chalk. It is private, so it's only accessible to me. And I'm just asking a question now. So can you provide some information on the startup journey, which is something that they discuss on their website, and the related image? So this is very similar to the experience that you would expect from an AI assistant, right? So next token prediction. But as you can see here, I'm also getting an image from the documentation about Stone and Chalk. So this is obviously something that we can do because ToothFairy is multimodal. So this is where we fine-tune the models to actually being able to, for the technical people, represent an image and text in the same embedding space. And then when we use RAG, because we have uploaded the documentation, we can then represent images and text inside the same embedding space, and we are able to retrieve the image in context with the question of the user. The last thing that you want is to show an image that doesn't make any sense, right? Inside the text. Sorry, I'm not going to show you again the same. As you can see here, I'm asking a follow-up question about the same kind of context. So again, keeping context about a mind map of what we just discussed. And it can generate a mind map dynamically, just like that. And again, this is thanks to the multimodality we've implemented. Then here, this is something that, by the way, Google, I think, copied, or at least, I mean, I'm pretty salty about this one. So essentially what I've done here is that I've asked the agent to create a new laptop, to create a ticket to request a new laptop. Now, obviously, this agent was the Stone and Chalk agent, which call it the customer service officer. And what happens when you call a customer service officer that cannot address your issue? They tell you, okay, let me pass you to another guy. And then you get upset because you're on the phone and you don't want to wait. So here is that it's a bit quicker because the Stone and Chalk agent has ended off the conversation to the service desk agent. And the service desk agent then took the request and automatically generated the ticket giving me the ID. And this is because we can hand off conversations between different agents. And this is obviously ideal when you have obviously multiple use cases that you don't want to bake into one single agent. However, you want to keep it spread across multiple agents. And obviously, we reference the documentation, which is something pretty standard. And we also show you here how you can create a web widget. So you can obviously customize everything, the logo. You can literally white label the whole thing if you want to. You can go through all the different customizations. Obviously, I'm not going to bore you to that in terms of everything that you can do, but you can do a lot. And then you just click a link. You go to the chat widget. You can embed it on your website if you like. You can start asking questions and get the answer right away. So, and again, this is fully customizable. As you can see, there is no ToothFairy there or there. It's just customized based on the colors of Stone and Chalk. So we have blue, they are purple. So that's essentially it. Obviously, in terms of if you want to connect with us, feel free. We absolutely are open to discuss. anything that relates to technical topic, business topics. Actually, many people say that I spend too much time talking about technicalities rather than talking about business. Maybe that's my fault. So feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn, websites, email, whatever. You can obviously sign up to the app for free if you want to. If you sign up today, you actually get 1 year for free, as long as you just tag some pictures of this event, because obviously for us it would be a bit of visibility, but you will get $60 credit and you can use our app for free for the entire year. And obviously, if you have problems with the app or you would like to just schedule a demo with us, just ping us. We're happy to set it up for you and get you started. Yeah, so then again, this is probably the slide that I should have shared before, but that's okay. That's basically what I said. I forgot about that. So then also we're gonna soon, and probably it's gonna be next week. We have run a CSRO event today with the chatbot Arena. But in our app next week, you will be able to compare all the different agents, essentially at certain tasks, which obviously is the best way to be able to determine if you are fine-tuning the models correctly, if you're updating the documentation correctly. So this is actually something very cool. Have you ever played with the LMCs? The agents comparison. Okay, so anyway, it's something not groundbreaking, so I'm not going to claim that this is my idea. It's something that you can see online as well, but we do this for the agents inside your workspace, which obviously allows you to compare how agents perform and is very powerful for that. Yeah, you can play with literally any model you like, so this is going to be pretty cool, but you can see this on the app, so I'm not going to say anything else. Yeah, and then Q&A. So I guess that's it for now. Thank you.